Rancher, is it the bulge between my legs that attracts you? A trans Apache woman asked. The sun rose slowly over the wide, open plains, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying with it the earthy smell of the land. On the outskirts of a small town near the edge of the desert lived a woman named Lani. She was Apache, proud of her heritage, and she carried herself with a quiet strength that seemed to echo the ancient stories of her people. Lani had grown up in a world that often misunderstood her. From a young age, she knew that she was different, that her heart and mind did not fit the path that others expected her to walk. She loved the traditions of her people, the dances, the stories, the connection to the land, but she also knew that her truth lay somewhere beyond what others could see. She was transgender, and even though she could not always explain it to those around her, she understood it deeply in her soul. Her days were simple but full of work and responsibility. She helped her family on their small ranch, caring for the animals, fixing fences, and tending the crops. The ranch was a modest one, not far from the main town, but it was a place where she could breathe freely, surrounded by the land she loved. The animals seemed to understand her in a way people sometimes did not. The horses would nuzzle her hand, the chickens would follow her around the yard, and even the old dog Rust wagged his tail a little faster whenever she came near. Despite her busy life, Lani often found moments to sit quietly and watch the world around her. She loved to see the way the light shifted over the plains, the way the wind carried the scent of sage and desert flowers, and the way the sky could change from bright blue to soft pastels in a single hour. These moments reminded her of her place in the world, not just as someone different, but as someone strong, connected, and capable. One morning, as she was fixing a fence near the edge of the property, Lani noticed a figure approaching in the distance. It was a man, tall and sturdy, riding a horse. His clothing marked him as a rancher from another area, someone who clearly knew the land and the life of work that went with it. Lani felt a small flicker of curiosity as he came closer. She had met people like him before, travelers or neighbors stopping by, but something about this man felt different. He rode up slowly and stopped a few feet away, tipping his hat in greeting. "Morning," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Name's Thomas. I was passing through and saw your ranch. Looks like you could use a hand with that fence." Lani wiped her hands on her pants and looked at him carefully. "Thanks, but I think I've got it handled," she replied, though she appreciated the offer. She noticed the way he studied the land, the way his eyes seemed to take in every detail of the ranch. It was clear he respected hard work, just as she did. Thomas smiled. "I could see that. You handle things pretty well on your own. I used to run a ranch like this myself. Sometimes it's nice to see someone else who takes care of the land with care." There was a pause, and then Lani felt a strange but pleasant warmth at his words. It was rare to meet someone who seemed to understand the balance of work, patience, and respect needed to live close to the earth. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine sharing her knowledge of the land, talking about the animals and the ways she kept everything running smoothly. Over the next few weeks, Thomas returned several times. Each visit was brief, a chance to check on his own horses or trade a few tips about ranching, but gradually a friendship formed. They spoke about everything from weather patterns to the best ways to care for the soil. Lani found that she could be herself around him, not hiding her thoughts or her way of seeing the world. She still held back parts of her story, the parts that might make others judge her, but she felt safe in his presence. At night, when the work was done and the stars filled the sky, Lani would often think about her life. She thought about her dreams, her fears, and the path that had brought her to this place. She remembered her family, some of whom accepted her fully, others who struggled to understand. She remembered her childhood, The long walks through the desert with her grandmother, who had taught her the old stories and songs. Those memories gave her courage. They reminded her that being true to herself was not only possible, it was necessary. One evening, after a long day of repairing a broken gate, Thomas stopped by again. This time he brought some food, simple bread and cheese, but it felt like a gift of kindness. They sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "You really know this land?" Thomas said quietly. "It's like you can read it, like it talks to you." Lonnie smiled softly. "It does. You just have to listen. The land has a way of telling you what it needs if you pay attention." There was a comfortable silence, and Lonnie felt a sense of connection that was rare in her life. She wanted to share more, to tell him about her struggles and who she truly was, but she was also cautious. The world could be harsh to people like her, and she had learned to protect herself. Still, in that quiet moment, she felt the possibility of trust. The days continued, each blending into the next with work, quiet reflection, and occasional visits from Thomas. Lonnie began to notice small changes in herself. Her confidence grew, her heart felt lighter, and she found herself smiling more often. She even started to imagine a future where she could live openly, surrounded by people who understood and respected her. But life on the ranch was not without its challenges. The weather could be unforgiving, storms sweeping across the plains without warning. Animals could fall ill, fences would break, and the work was never truly done. Yet Lonnie faced each day with determination, drawing strength from the land, her heritage, and the quiet friendships she had formed. One morning, as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Lonnie walked along the ridge overlooking the ranch. The wind blew her hair gently, and she felt a deep sense of peace. She knew that life would not always be easy, that people would not always understand her, but she also knew that she was capable of facing whatever came her way. The land had taught her resilience, and her heart had taught her courage. In that moment, Lonnie made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to care for the ranch, honor her heritage, and embrace her true self. She would seek connection with those who respected her, and she would not allow fear or judgment to dictate her life. The journey ahead would be long and sometimes difficult, but she was ready. And so, part one of Lonnie's story comes to a close, setting the stage for the challenges, friendships, and personal growth that would shape her path in the days to come. The plains stretched endlessly before her, full of possibilities, and Lonnie stepped forward with quiet strength, ready to face whatever the world had in store. The following weeks brought changes to Lonnie's life that she had not expected. The days were long and warm, filled with the steady rhythm of ranch work, but there was a new energy in the air, a sense that life was slowly beginning to stretch beyond the familiar boundaries of her land. Thomas continued to visit, always respectful, always kind, and each time he came, the conversations between them grew deeper. They spoke about the history of the Apache people, about the lessons of the land, and about their hopes for the future. Lonnie found herself sharing small pieces of her past with him. She told him about her childhood, how she had spent hours listening to her grandmother's stories about the ancestors who had walked the plains before her. She talked about the traditions she loved, the dances, the songs, the way her people celebrated life and honored the earth. And she spoke in careful words about her truth, that she had always felt different, that she carried a spirit that did not fit the roles that others expected of her. Thomas listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. He asked questions sometimes, gentle ones, showing that he wanted to understand. Lonnie realized that he was one of the few people in her life who seemed to see her fully, without fear or misunderstanding. It was a feeling she had not known often, a warmth that settled in her chest and made the days feel lighter. Even as she grew more comfortable with Thomas, Lonnie knew that the world outside the ranch could be harsh. Some neighbors whispered when she walked into town. Some of her distant relatives shook their heads or avoided her gaze. But here, on the land she had cared for since childhood, she felt a sense of belonging. The animals responded to her touch, the wind seemed to carry her thoughts, and the soil itself felt like an extension of her being. One afternoon, a storm swept across the plains. Dark clouds rolled in from the west, and the wind began to howl. Lonnie worked quickly to secure the animals, moving the horses into their stalls and checking the fences that might be broken by the rising wind. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, and she could see lightning flashing across the horizon. It was dangerous work, but she moved with confidence, drawing on years of experience. Just as she was finishing, Thomas appeared at the edge of the ranch. His horse was splashing through the mud, and his coat was soaked. "Need a hand?" he shouted over the wind. Lonnie shook her head with a smile. "I've got it, but thanks. It's nice to see a familiar face out here in the storm." Together they made sure the animals were safe. Thomas helped repair a broken gate, and Lonnie was impressed by his skill and determination. Despite the weather, he worked calmly and carefully, never rushing, never careless. When the storm finally passed, they stood together, drenched but smiling, watching the clouds begin to break and the sun peek through. "That was something," Thomas said, brushing mud from his hands. "You handle storms well." Lonnie laughed softly. "You have to. Life on the plains doesn't wait for anyone. You learn to adapt, or it teaches you a hard lesson." The storm seemed to mark a turning point in their friendship. After that day, Thomas stayed longer during his visits. They shared meals on the porch, sometimes sitting in silence, sometimes talking for hours. Lonnie discovered that he had a deep respect for the land, for history, and for people who lived honestly and worked hard. She found herself admiring his patience, his gentle humor, and the way he treated her as an equal, not someone to be questioned or judged. But even as Lonnie felt the comfort of friendship, she knew she had more work to do within herself. She struggled with moments of doubt, wondering if she would ever find acceptance beyond the ranch. Would people in town ever understand her? Could she be fully herself without hiding parts of her identity? These thoughts weighed on her during the quiet hours of the night when she sat under the stars, listening to the soft cries of owls and the rustle of grass in the wind. To distract herself, Lonnie poured more energy into the ranch. She experimented with new ways of planting crops, tried different feeding routines for the animals, and even repaired the old barn roof that had been leaking for years. The work was exhausting, but it gave her a sense of accomplishment and pride. Every nail hammered, every fence mended, every animal fed was a small victory, a reminder that she was capable and strong. One morning as she walked to check the horses, she noticed a group of children from the nearby town playing near the edge of the property. They were laughing and running, their voices carrying on the wind. Lonnie watched them quietly, remembering her own childhood, the freedom she had felt when running through open fields, and the lessons she had learned from her elders. She felt a sudden desire to connect with them, to share her knowledge of the land, the animals, and the traditions of her people. Over the next few days, she began to invite the children onto the ranch, teaching them about caring for animals, planting crops, and respecting the earth. The children were eager to learn, their curiosity bright and endless. Lonnie felt a deep joy in sharing what she knew, in seeing their eyes light up when they discovered something new. It reminded her that knowledge and kindness could bridge gaps, that understanding could grow where fear once stood. Thomas often joined her during these lessons. He would help lift heavy objects, explain technical aspects of ranching, or simply sit back and watch, smiling at the connection Lonnie had with the children. Together they created a small community of learning and respect, a place where differences were not judged but embraced, and where everyone's strengths were celebrated. One evening, after a long day teaching the children and caring for the ranch, Lonnie sat alone on a hill overlooking the plains. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. She thought about how far she had come, from the uncertain child who had felt different and alone, to the young woman who was beginning to find her place in the world. She thought about the friendship she had formed, the respect she had earned, and the small victories that reminded her of her strength. At that moment, she realized that her journey was far from over. There would still be challenges, moments of doubt, and obstacles to overcome. But she felt a growing confidence, a quiet understanding that she could face whatever came her way. The land had taught her resilience, her heritage had given her roots, and her heart had shown her the importance of truth and courage. In the days that followed, Lonnie began to take small steps toward embracing her identity more fully. She spoke openly with a few trusted neighbors about her life, sharing her story in a way that was honest and thoughtful. Some were hesitant at first, unsure how to respond, but many listened, asked questions, and began to understand. Lonnie realized that change often began with patience, kindness, and a willingness to share one's truth. Thomas remained a steady presence in her life. His friendship, respect, and encouragement became a source of strength for Lonnie. She trusted him more than anyone else she had met in a long time. Together, they shared the joys and challenges of ranch life, the quiet moments under the stars, and the laughter that came with small victories. Lonnie began to see that connection, understanding, and mutual respect were possible, even in a world that sometimes seemed harsh and unforgiving. Part 2 of Lonnie's story closed with a sense of hope and growing confidence. She had faced storms, both literal and emotional, and had emerged stronger and more certain of her place in the world. The plains stretched endlessly before her, filled with possibilities, and Lonnie stepped forward with courage and determination, ready to continue her journey of growth, acceptance, and the search for connection. The next season brought new challenges to Lonnie's life on the ranch. The summer had been long and hot, and the land was starting to show signs of wear. The grass was dry in many places, and some of the crops struggled under the relentless sun. Lonnie rose early each day, checking the animals, watering the plants, and repairing fences that had weakened under the heat. Every morning, she felt the weight of responsibility, but also the quiet pride that came from caring for something she loved deeply. Thomas had been visiting less frequently as he dealt with responsibilities on his own ranch, but whenever he came, his presence brought a sense of calm and encouragement. He would help her plan irrigation schedules, show her new methods of caring for the soil, or simply offer a listening ear. Lonnie appreciated his guidance, but she also felt the growing sense that she needed to rely on her own strength. The ranch was hers, her land, and every success was a reflection of her resilience and dedication. One particularly hot afternoon, Lonnie noticed a young foal struggling near the edge of the pasture. Its mother had wandered off, distracted by a sudden disturbance in the brush. Lonnie's heart tightened. She ran to the foal, calming it with gentle words and careful movements. The foal trembled but trusted her, pressing its small body against her hands as she led it back to the mare. The mother nickered softly, and the two were reunited. As Lonnie watched the foal nurse, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction and connection. The land, the animals, and her own efforts were intertwined in ways that reminded her of her grandmother's stories. She thought about the lessons she had learned as a child, lessons about patience, understanding, and respect for life. That each challenge on the ranch, whether it was fixing a broken fence or saving a struggling foal, reinforced her belief in her ability to face hardships and overcome them. The challenges of the season were not limited to the land. Lonnie also faced tensions with some townspeople. While many had come to respect her and her dedication to the ranch, a few still whispered or avoided her when she visited the market. It was painful, but she refused to let it discourage her. Instead, she focused on showing the best of herself through her actions, letting her work and her integrity speak louder than any rumor or doubt. One day, as she repaired a section of fence near the northern edge of the ranch, she noticed smoke rising in the distance. Her heart raced. Fires could spread quickly in the dry summer heat, threatening the animals and crops. Without hesitation, she grabbed a bucket and ran toward the area, calling for help as she went. Thomas had come by that morning, and seeing the smoke, he joined her, bringing additional supplies and a calm presence that helped her think clearly. Together, they worked tirelessly to control the fire. Lonnie organized the animals to a safe area, while Thomas helped dig fire breaks and contain the flames. Sweat dripped from their faces and the air was thick with smoke, but neither gave up. Hours later, exhausted but victorious, they watched as the fire finally died down, leaving the land scarred but safe. "That was close," Thomas said, wiping soot from his hands. "You handled it well. Most people would have panicked." Lonnie smiled, though she felt the ache of exhaustion. "You have to face things as they come. Running away doesn't solve anything. The land, the animals, they depend on us to act." The fire became a story in the town, and many came to commend Lonnie for her bravery. Even those who had been distant began to see her not just as different, but as capable, strong, and dedicated. It was a small victory, but it mattered. Lonnie realized that actions could change minds more than words ever could. Respect had to be earned, and she was determined to keep earning it every day. Amid these challenges, Lonnie also began to explore more of her identity and personal growth. She started keeping a journal, writing down her thoughts, her dreams, and her reflections on the life she was building. In her writing, she allowed herself to be honest about her struggles, the loneliness, the moments of doubt, the desire for acceptance, and also about her joys, the small victories, and the deep connection she felt to her heritage and the land. Through her journal, Lonnie discovered a deeper understanding of herself. She realized that strength was not just about physical work or surviving storms and fires, but also about embracing her truth and trusting her instincts. She began to think more about the future, imagining what life could be like if she fully stepped into who she was, without fear or hesitation. During this time, Thomas returned to visit more frequently. Their friendship had grown into a quiet bond of trust and mutual respect. They spent evenings sitting on the porch, watching the stars, and talking about their dreams. Lonnie found that she could confide in him about her fears, her hopes, and the challenges she faced as a trans woman in a community that did not always understand. Thomas listened without judgment, offering encouragement and wisdom when she needed it most. One evening, after a long day of work, Lonnie spoke to Thomas about her dreams for the future. "I want to make this ranch more than just a place for me to live," she said. "I want it to be a place where people can learn, where children can understand the land, and where everyone is treated with respect." Thomas nodded. "You already have that spirit. You care about more than just yourself. That's rare, and I believe you can do it. You just have to take it one step at a time." The words stayed with Lonnie as the days passed. She began to take concrete steps toward her vision, planning educational activities for children, creating spaces for learning about Apache traditions, and inviting neighbors to visit the ranch and see the work she had done. She wanted people to understand her, not through rumors or fear, but through experience and shared knowledge. As the summer gave way to autumn, Lonnie faced another unexpected challenge. A severe storm system moved across the plains, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, and falling branches. Trees were uprooted, fences were damaged, and some of the crops she had nurtured were destroyed. The storm was a test of endurance and patience, but Lani faced it with the same determination she had shown through every hardship. She worked tirelessly to repair the damage, guided by the lessons of her ancestors and the knowledge she had gained over the years. Thomas came to help again, and together they rebuilt fences, cleared fallen trees, and salvaged what they could from the crops. The work was exhausting, but it strengthened their partnership and deepened the trust between them. Lani felt gratitude for his presence, knowing that true friends were rare, and she valued the bond they had built. Amid these trials, Lani continued to nurture the young foal she had rescued months earlier. The horse had grown strong and healthy, a living reminder of the importance of patience, care, and persistence. Each time she watched it run across the plains, she felt a sense of pride and connection. The foal symbolized more than just an animal she had saved. It represented her ability to nurture, protect, and create life even in difficult circumstances. As the season progressed, Lani also noticed subtle changes in the town. People who had once whispered or avoided her now greeted her with respect. Children spoke her name with excitement and curiosity, eager to learn from her. Even some of the adults began to ask questions, showing a willingness to understand and appreciate her perspective. It was not a sudden change, but a slow, steady shift, a reflection of her perseverance, her honesty, and the strength of her character. One quiet evening, as Lani sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the hills, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced storms, fires, and the challenges of a changing community, yet she had grown stronger, more confident, and more connected to the world around her. She realized that life was not defined by the hardships alone, but by how one responded to them. Resilience, courage, and kindness were what mattered most. In that moment, she made a silent promise to herself to continue building her vision for the ranch, to nurture the bonds she had formed, and to embrace her identity fully, without fear or hesitation. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she was ready. She understood that true strength came not just from surviving, but from living authentically and with purpose. Part 3 closed with Lani standing at the edge of the plains, looking out over the land she loved. The winds whispered through the grass, carrying with them the promise of new challenges, new connections. Lani felt a sense of peace and determination. She knew that the path ahead would be filled with both trials and triumphs, but she was prepared to face them, guided by her heart, her heritage, and the unwavering connection she had to the land. The first frost of the season touched the plains with a gentle chill. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and dried grass, and the sky stretched endlessly in pale shades of gold and blue. Lani stood on the porch of her ranch house, looking out at the land she had worked so hard to care for. Each fence, each field, each path she had cleared was a reflection of her perseverance, her dedication, and her vision for the future. Over the past months, Lani had faced storms, fires, and countless small challenges, but each obstacle had made her stronger. She had learned not only to care for the land, but also to nurture relationships, build trust, and embrace her true self. The ranch had become more than a place to live. It was a symbol of her journey, a space where her heritage, her identity, and her work came together in harmony. The town had changed too. People who had once been distant or unsure now approached her with respect and curiosity. Children came to the ranch regularly, eager to learn about the land, the animals, and the traditions she shared. Adults asked questions, seeking advice about farming, soil, and animal care. Lani felt a quiet pride as she watched the small community she had helped cultivate grow. It was a reminder that change was possible when patience, dedication, and kindness were present. Thomas had become a constant presence in her life, a friend, a partner in work, and a source of encouragement. They spent long afternoons together fixing fences, teaching children, or simply sitting under the shade of an old tree, talking about dreams and ideas for the future. Lonnie appreciated his steady support, but she also realized that her own courage had carried her this far. Every decision, every action, every small step toward truth and growth had come from within her. One cold morning, Lonnie noticed that one of the younger horses had injured its leg. She immediately gathered supplies and tended to the animal, cleaning the wound and wrapping it carefully. It was a slow and careful process, requiring patience and gentleness, but Lonnie approached it with calm determination. She remembered the foal she had rescued months ago and felt the same deep sense of responsibility. The animals relied on her, and she would not fail them. As she worked, Thomas came over, carrying a bundle of blankets. "I thought these might help keep the animals warm," he said. "It's going to be a cold night." Lonnie smiled, accepting the blankets with gratitude. "Thank you. It's good to know I'm not alone in caring for them." The two of them spent the day ensuring that all the animals were safe, warm, and well-fed. The work was hard, but it brought a sense of peace and fulfillment. Lonnie realized that caring for the ranch and the animals was not just a job, it was a calling. Each effort, no matter how small, contributed to the well-being of the land, the creatures on it, and herself. Over the next few weeks, Lonnie focused on expanding her vision for the ranch. She organized workshops for children, teaching them how to plant crops, care for animals, and understand the traditions of her Apache heritage. She shared stories passed down from her grandmother, explaining the significance of rituals, songs, and the deep respect for the land that had guided her people for generations. The children listened with wide eyes, fascinated by the lessons and eager to participate. The town also became more involved. Some families began visiting the ranch regularly, bringing their children to learn and helping Lonnie with larger projects. Fences were repaired faster, crops were planted more efficiently, and the community felt a renewed connection to the land. Lonnie saw that her vision was taking shape, not just as a personal dream, but as a shared experience that could bring people together. Amid these successes, Lonnie continued to grow personally. She became more comfortable expressing her identity openly, sharing her story with neighbors who were willing to listen. She faced moments of fear and doubt, but each time she reminded herself of the strength she had discovered in her own heart. She understood that authenticity was a source of power, that living truthfully allowed her to build deeper connections and inspire those around her. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Lonnie and Thomas sat on the porch, enjoying the quiet beauty of the plains. "You've built something amazing here," Thomas said softly. "Not just the ranch, but the community, the respect, the knowledge you've shared. People see you now, not as someone different, but as someone remarkable." Lonnie looked out over the land, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. "It's been hard," she admitted. "There were times I doubted myself, times I thought I wouldn't make it, but I kept going. And now I see that the effort was worth it. The land, the animals, the people, it all matters." Thomas reached over and placed a hand on hers. "And you've done it your way, staying true to yourself. That's the most important part." The words touched Lonnie deeply. She realized that her journey was not just about surviving challenges or earning respect. It was about embracing her identity, honoring her heritage, and living with courage and kindness. And she had learned that true strength came from being authentic, from taking responsibility, and from building connections based on trust and respect. As winter approached, The ranch transformed under the soft frost and gentle snow. The animals adapted to the colder weather. The fields rested beneath the earth, and Lonnie continued her work with steady determination. She found joy in the simple routines, feeding the horses, checking the fences, and sharing stories with the children who visited. Every day she felt more connected to her life, her land, and her community. One day, a letter arrived from a relative she had not seen in years. They had heard about her work, her ranch, and her dedication to the land, and they wanted to visit. Lonnie felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Family had always been complicated, but she saw this as an opportunity to show them the woman she had become, the life she had built, and the strength she carried. When her relatives arrived, Lonnie welcomed them warmly. She showed them the ranch, introduced them to the children she taught, and explained the projects she had undertaken. At first there was hesitation and surprise in their eyes, but as they observed her dedication, her knowledge, and her kindness, they began to understand. By the end of the visit, old tensions softened, replaced by admiration and respect. Lonnie realized that patience and consistent effort could bridge gaps, even in relationships that had once seemed impossible. The final test of her journey came during a town festival, where she was asked to give a speech about the ranch, the community, and her vision for the future. Standing before a crowd, Lonnie felt her heart race. She looked out at the familiar faces, children she had taught, neighbors she had earned respect from, and even the few who had once doubted her. She took a deep breath and began to speak. She shared her story, her love for the land, the lessons she had learned, and the importance of honesty, respect, and community. Her voice was steady, her words thoughtful and sincere. The audience listened intently, and when she finished, they erupted in applause. Lonnie felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had known. Her journey, her struggles, and her efforts had led to a moment of recognition, not just for herself, but for the values she represented. As the festival ended and the crowd dispersed, Thomas joined her. "You did it," he said, smiling. "Everyone sees what I've known for months. You're amazing, Lonnie, and you've made a difference in so many lives." Lonnie smiled back, feeling a profound sense of peace. It wasn't just me. The land, the animals, the children, the community, we all made it together. But yes, I've grown stronger, and I finally feel like I belong. That night, under a sky full of stars, Lonnie walked through the fields of her ranch. She felt the wind on her face, the soft rustle of grass under her feet, and the steady beat of her own heart. She had faced storms, fire, doubt, and fear, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. She had built a life rooted in truth, courage, and respect. She had discovered her place in the world and embraced it fully. Lonnie knew that life would continue to bring challenges, new opportunities, and unexpected twists. But she also knew that she was ready for whatever lay ahead. The ranch, the land, the animals, and the community were her home, and she had the strength, knowledge, and heart to protect and nurture it. She understood that the journey of life was ongoing, but she felt confident that she could navigate it with grace, courage, and integrity. As she stood on the porch one last time before night fully fell, Lonnie looked out over the plains with a sense of fulfillment. The sun had set, leaving a sky of deep indigo and silver stars, and the wind carried the promise of new beginnings. She felt gratitude for every challenge, every friendship, and every lesson that had shaped her journey. Her story was one of resilience, growth, and triumph, not just over external obstacles, but over fear, doubt, and the limitations others had tried to place on her. Part 4 closed with Lonnie at peace, a woman who had embraced her identity, honored her heritage, and built a life of purpose, connection, and hope. The plains stretched endlessly before her, filled with possibilities. And Lonnie stepped forward with confidence, ready to face the future with the same courage and determination that had carried her through every season of her life.